TMU colleagues, students, alumni, and friends. Thank you for taking the time to listen to some of my thoughts as Taipei Medical University approaches an inflection point. We're going to establish a new management team and select a new president for the university. This is the first in what will be a series of free speech lectures. I have named it thus because this principle, free speech, and the commitment to an open society motivate much of what I want to share with you. This inaugural talk is called TMU Wildfire. Although my concerns are for 2023, the decade of the 20s, the decade of the 30s, and the decade of 40s, what lies ahead, please allow me to begin with a story from the past, a personal story, because I believe that will help explain to you some of my motivations for doing this. Some of you know that I arrived in Taiwan more than 30 years ago. My intention at the time was quite simple. I wanted to complete a series of EEG experiments and then promptly return to the United States. For personal reasons, however, it was necessary to change my plans, so hurriedly I sought employment in Taiwan, and I found that employment at another university. During my very first week teaching at that university, I met a freshman, a young man from Hualien in Taiwan, the East Coast. His name was Lin Feng-Fei. At the time, I really knew very little about Taiwan. And being such a young man, he didn't know much about Taiwan, especially the social and political conditions of the 1980s during martial law at that time. But over the 4 years of his undergraduate study and during the period of our friendship, we learned much together. Although more accurately, I should say, I learned much from him. When he was a senior at that university, he and his classmates in the law department, they decided to create an underground newspaper. At that time, it was very risky. Their intention was to try to help promote social and political reform. They called their newspaper Wildfire. That is why today, in commemoration of my old friend, Lin Feng-Fei, I have titled this speech, Wildfire. Now, how are the events of Taiwan's 1980s related to 2023 at TMU? What motivated Lin Feng-Fei and his classmates, their Wildfire newspaper, was an environment that was autocratic and infested by legal corruption. Even though we were in an academic institution, decisions were made by appointed bureaucrats, free speech was not protected, and most of my colleagues, the majority of whom held PhDs, even when discussing matters relevant to their areas of expertise, they were afraid to voice any criticism of the administration. At meetings, even when ignorant, greedy, and myopic ideas were being discussed, most of my colleagues remained silent. At that time, all we had were meaningless slogans. We were just emerging from the era of martial law in Taiwan. Still, why do I talk about the past? People who know me often hear me say something like, today's not that important. The past is not so important. What matters the most is the future. If we think too much about today and think too much about the past, we're going to miss the future. And the future matters most The reason for talking about the past is that I detect similarities between my current environment, the most recent 5.5 years, and the world of more than 30 years ago. So my intention today is to politely, calmly, and rationally state my concerns as a gentle and constructive reminder of what we should not be doing. More importantly, what we should be doing. I hope that I will not be misunderstood. To criticize does not imply a repudiation of all that has been done. Some good has been accomplished, and that good deserves to be acknowledged. It deserves to be commended. The problem is that we could be doing so much better than we are. And I do not wish to only blame others. I served as a dean at TMU for 6 years, and there were times when I should have been openly critical, but I was not. I deserve to be blamed for each time that I sat in silence, listening to and observing what I knew to be misleading, exaggerated, or just plain wrong. Like most of my colleagues, I too failed to exhibit moral courage. Too many times I sat through annual consensus meetings. I knew them to be a waste of time. Consensus can only be achieved if there is substantive communication. That's a premise. But we did not communicate. Instead, too much time was devoted to praising ourselves, and too many people took the opportunity to praise the management team for its leadership. We don't need self-congratulatory meetings. Those are more befitting the Chinese Communist Party. They're not suitable to any establishment in Taiwan. Too many times I sat through those same meetings when many people delivered talks on themes, sometimes artificial intelligence, sometimes sustainability, many others. The problem is that the speakers, for the most part, they did not speak from a knowledge base. They were speaking from ignorance. When we speak from ignorance, we are only promoting fantasy. And when policy is determined or decisions are based upon fantasy, those policies and those decisions are destructive of the common good. Too often I sat through our monthly administrative meetings when we should have been discussing substantive issues. But instead, we devoted our time to discussing things like how to revise our slogans that were then required to appear on every administrative report. The emphasis on slogans, that itself betrays a lack of substance, and it's only befitting a closed, not open society. It was strikingly reminiscent to me of a period of time that I had been believed to be buried in the past of more than 30 years ago. Too often I have witnessed conflicts of interest that are defended merely because they are not illegal. This applies not only to our board of directors, but also to activities of others within our institution. To defend behavior merely because it is legal is a standard too low. As an educational, clinical, and research institution, we should expect much more of ourselves. The new TMU, the one that I envision, should create a much higher standard. We have a moral obligation to aspire to those standards. Indeed, we have a moral obligation to set an example for the rest of Taiwan. The fundamental problem that we confront is a state of mind. It's an attitude. What we need as we prepare to embark on a new era of research, pedagogy, and clinical practice is the encouragement, not the discouragement, of responsible, open, and honest criticism. When we fail to be transparent and fail to create an environment of clear-eyed, candid discussion, ignorance will flourish and the truth cannot be perceived. The administration, the management team, the president, they certainly have the right to expect that criticism will be fair, balanced, responsible, and based upon facts, not rumor and not innuendo. But the TMU community, the faculty, the staff, the students, the alumni, they have the right to expect that an environment for constructive criticism will be cultivated by our management team and by our board of directors. I do know that some people will argue TMU is a private university. Therefore, the TMU community has little choice but to follow, obey, accept. This view reflects a misunderstanding of the place of TMU in Taiwan. We are not a subsidiary of a large corporation, nor do we belong to a religious organization. And the era within which TMU was a family enterprise, that is over, that is past. Indeed, 2 of the hospitals that we manage, those are public institutions. They are not private institutions. No one person, nor any small group of people own TMU. Indeed, no one should imagine that they do own or that they are the primary management team for TMU. TMU belongs to all of us, my colleagues, the faculty, the clinicians, and our professional administrative staff. Some people might challenge me, appropriately, suitably. How much do I know about hospital management? How much do I know about the relevant laws? Or indeed, how much do I know about the relevant business and financial matters? The truth, simply stated, many of those details I am in ignorance of. But there is no need to fear ignorance. What should be feared is the unwillingness to admit to and acknowledge ignorance. It is only those who confront their own ignorance who are able to construct a strong management team, one that is guided by pragmatic idealism, the pursuit of idealistic aspirations while constrained by pragmatic necessity. In other words, money and other resources. These 2 combined are necessary to create a TMU, indeed a Taiwan, that can flourish. Money and other resources are necessary for existence. But if we are not pursuing ideals, if we're not seeking to create a newer world, there is no purpose for the existence of any academic institution. The path to the future is strewn with challenges for which we are not prepared. Taiwan's near demographic collapse being just one among the most prominent. This steep population decline obliges us to act yet more quickly and more boldly to internationalize. As a major educational and research institution, it is our obligation to lead, and to lead by example, not only for ourselves, not only for the academic institutions in Taiwan, but for the entire nation of Taiwan. To meet these challenges, indeed many more, including the need for effective academia-industry collaboration, not the fantasy that we have right now. We must recruit and retain talented young faculty, clinicians, administrators, and students. The challenge is to create an environment in which young, talented people will choose, where they can create meaningful futures. An environment that they choose to remain in, not because they have no other options, but because this is the best option for them, a suitable environment within which they can create their futures. Young, talented people, they need to feel that in this environment, they can make full use of their capabilities in the pursuit of excellence. When we require of them that they waste time filling out many bureaucratic forms, when we require that they waste time attending classes from which they can learn nothing, when we require that they write applications and manuscripts for senior faculty, and when we require that their work be evaluated annually, every year, by people who do not understand their work, we chase the talented young people away. They choose to go elsewhere. People who have the ability to do creative work, and those are the people that we're trying to attract. Just are those people who think freely and who are not inclined to obey the orders of people who do not understand the newest methods, the newest techniques, the newest theories, and the newest advances in science. Science changes too quickly. It is absurd for people whose scientific knowledge is out of date and for management specialists to be telling young scientists what they should be doing. Remember this, Newton invented calculus when he was 23. Pascal invented the first calculating devices when he was only 16. In the medical sciences, people like Crick and Salk were a bit older than that, but their nature was a rebellious nature. If we know anything at all about science, it is this. Science does not progress because we obediently follow others. It progresses because we doubt. It progresses because we question. It progresses because we challenge the claims of those who came before us. Many mistakes have been committed. Prominent among these now is the terrible planning for the new campus. But past mistakes themselves are not the most egregious problem. The problem resides in the failure to acknowledge and learn from our mistakes. And the only way forward, the only way to learn, is to not only permit, but to actively encourage critical, substantive dialogue. Let me be very specific about the dialogue to which I refer. As we're preparing to select a new president, to create a new management team, we should follow the guidelines that have been established by the Ministry of Education for public universities. Each person who seeks to be the next president of TMU should be required to present her or his vision of the future. Even better, all of those who seek to be the next president should stand on the same stage together in a civilized manner, debate how we should go forward. All faculty, administrative staff, clinicians, students, and alumni should be extended this courtesy. All of us who collectively own this university should be permitted to evaluate the character of the candidates and compare their competing visions for the future. Indeed, we should even be given the opportunity to give concrete expression to our preferences through voting. I have been critical today. I have probably caused some people to feel a measure of discomfort. But please do not mistake my intentions. They are really quite simple. I choose to have faith in my TMU colleagues, just as I have faith in my fellow citizens of my country, Taiwan. I choose to believe my colleagues and fellow citizens have the capacity for self-reflection and the ability to admit flaws and failings. I choose to believe that we have the ability to correct and to improve. Moreover, that we have the moral courage to change directions, to improve ourselves, and to aspire to greatness. If you are a student who is considering whether or not you should attend TMU, I say to you, come here. You will not be disappointed. If you are a clinician, a scientist, a scholar, or an executive, the same. Please do come here. We will not disappoint you. If you are a foreigner who is considering a visit to or a move to Taiwan, I say to you, come here. You will not be disappointed. TMU and Taiwan belong to the international community. We're part of that community of open societies where dissent is tolerated, even welcomed. We know our shortcomings. We confront them. We strive to be better. The very fact that I can freely voice my criticisms, both of my employer and my nation, proves that TMU and Taiwan are good choices for you. Since I'm speaking from an institution dedicated to higher learning, do I have any special words for young people? 1. If you choose to believe what I say, don't believe because I say it. You should have other reasons, always. If you endorse what I say, do so only because you have cultivated the intellect, the independence, and the courage to judge responsibly and create your own path forward in life. Don't do what anyone tells you. If you make the effort to learn assiduously, to think clearly, to behave responsibly, and to cultivate a conscience that can distinguish between good and evil, then you should do what you choose, just so long as you are willing to assume complete responsibility for the results. This is the spirit of Lin Feng-Fei. More than 30 years ago, my young friend taught me many lessons. In the years since, I've often lacked the courage to act on those lessons. And I've made many mistakes besides that. But tonight, I am trying to do and to say what I imagine Lin Feng-Fei would do if he were here today. That is, try to perceive the truth, try to speak the truth clearly, and then let the chips fall wherever they may. For this evening I am drawing to a close, yet I will be joining you again here very soon. There is much more to say and much more to do. For after all, we still have miles to go before we sleep. Recently, a friend whom I've known for almost 30 years has commented that they prefer the me from the 1980s and the 1990s, the me from more than 20 years ago. Recently, I have thought much about the past and thought much about people from the past, a large number of whom are already deceased. Among these is Lin Feng-Fei. I wish ever so much that the me of today, of 2023, could sit down with the Lin Feng-Fei that I knew in the 1980s. I would like to ask him, should I do this? Should I say these things? And should I persevere until the end? I believe that if the me of today could sit down with Lin Feng-Fei, I believe he would say that if you don't persevere until the end, there's no point. I believe he would say, if not now, then when? I believe he would say, if not you, if not us, then who? I wish you all a pleasant good evening and a brighter tomorrow. Thank you.